All right, wonderful. Thank you, Tasha. So just going through here, we're excited to talk to everybody today. And again, just a quick snapshot there of what Tasha just mentioned for your questions. And wanted to kick things off here. So I'm Justin Smith, the Vice President of Sales here at Alooma. We also have on the line today from Tel Aviv, Israel, Yair Weinberger, who is our co-founder and CTO. And over the past months and years, we've had quite a few enhancements, quite a few different areas where both the technology has improved, and we've made some other exciting improvements that we wanted to share with everybody today. And we thought that sending this out and inviting you to hear about it would be a fun way to get started. And so what I want to do is what we'll hand this over to Yair, where he'll be able to go through and we'll take a look at the agenda here, but we'll go through just a high level overview of Alooma. And then Yair will speak to some of these new releases and enhancements that we've made. And then also, for those that are here, we'll give you a sneak peek into the future of Alooma. And then lastly, I will be able to update everybody on our new pricing model, which we're excited to share as well, which we think goes right in hand with some of these other enhancements that we've made. So with that, we are excited to get going. Again, feel free to post your questions in the channel, and we will jump right into things, and I'll hand the mic over to Yair.
Thank you, Justin. Let me just make sure I can share my screen here. All right, perfect. Let's see. Yeah, looks like you can see my screen now. So nice to meet you all. Thank you for being with us on the webinar today. I'm, as Justin mentioned, Yair, one of Alooma's founders and CTO. And just, most of you are probably familiar with Alooma in some way. I do want to give a quick overview before diving into what's new of what is Alooma. So Alooma is a data pipeline as a service designed to help companies utilize their data and make use of their data easily. And when we say data pipeline, we try to break it into, dissect what data pipeline is into the basic components, which is what the Alooma service provides. So on the left, of course, you see the integration. One of the basic tenets of a data pipeline is to be able to read data. So Alooma can read the data from 100 of different data sources. And actually, the first thing that I'm going to show you today, which I'm very excited about, is a generic connector that we have built that allows you to basically connect any data source, even if Alooma never heard of it or Alooma doesn't know of. And this is what we call a generic REST connector, and this is the first new feature I'm going to show very soon. Once data has been collected, it's all going into a queue, a message queue, which is a collection point for all the events. We can use that to make sure that we process everything. We don't lose any data. We process every event exactly once, and it will provide exactly one semantics. Inside the pipeline itself, you can do two main things. One is the ability to, so the first part of the ETL, the extract and transform load, is extracting data from the source. Once data have been extracted, the transform part takes place. And the first step of the transform is the code engine. Alooma gives the ability to run arbitrary code. Any Python code can be run on the events themselves that are coming in from all the different data sources. And Alooma will take care of scaling that, again, of making sure that everything is being processed, of error handling. From there, the next step is data governance. So making sure we know what's in the data, maintaining the schema, either importing the schema from sources that have strong schema, for example, Oracle or Salesforce have strong schema, or inferring the schema from the data itself for data sources like clickstream events that does not have predefined schema in them. That is the mapper. And the mapper component is also responsible of managing the schema over time. So as the data evolves, the schema changes, that's what the mapper component does. And then the restream queue, which is basically responsible for handling errors gracefully. So every time we have an error, every time something doesn't fit into our data model, we get an erroneous event, our target is down. From any reason, the data could not be pushed to where it needs to be, or any error in processing have happened, that will go into that queue, and it will be waiting for reprocessing. And again, I'm not going to show all of these features today. This is a little bit more advanced session where we're going to talk only about some new and exciting stuff. Of course, on the right side, Illuma is able to push the data into different targets. It could be cloud data warehouses, different cloud data warehouses. It could be S3. Alooma also pushes all of the raw data to S3 as well. So this was a quick overview of Illuma. And again, feel free to post questions if you want to expand, if you want me to expand on any of those. So the first thing that's new is, as I mentioned, the REST connectors. So the ability to connect any data source, even something that we didn't write, we didn't create, and new integration that we didn't think of. So up until now, the only option to push data that didn't have a native integration with Illuma was to use a webhook, which was essentially set up something in the service that you want to import that will send Illuma an event every time something changes. Unfortunately, that's not always possible. Not every data source has the ability to send a webhook when something changes. And also sometimes we do want to import a large amount of data. Not always webhook is the right choice. And then sometimes webhook also doesn't contain all the data. On the other hand, it's a much slower overhead than creating a full-blown native integration. So the REST reader is an infrastructure that allows you to connect every data source. And I will show a few examples, but some of the things that our customers have done with it so far are the Jira, Asana, Shopify. These are just to name a few examples that were used by our customers. So I'm actually going to move from here to show it to you in live to a real life Illuma deployment that has few REST readers set up. So this is the Illuma system. Again, if you haven't seen it, on the left, you see the different integrations that currently exist. This specific example is pushing data into Snowflake. And if we want to add a new REST connector, all we need to do is to click add a new input, like with everything, with all of the Illuma's integration. But now we are going to choose the REST API. Once I'm choosing the REST API, all I need to put in, and of course we have extensive documentation of exactly how to set it up, but what is the API URL? What is the method that I'm going to use to get the data? It can be get or post. If I have authentication headers, I would add them here. Supports different pagination types. So simple pagination or session pagination. Essentially, one type is where we create some kind of a report and then we get back a session ID and keep getting data for that session ID. And the other is every response include an identifier for the next page. And then custom parameters, any parameters on the request where the data exists, even more headers and different types of headers. All of those are available in the REST connector. So basically, it's very robust and allows you to connect many different REST integrations. And then, of course, it also supports the well-known Illuma one-click mode. So we will choose a schema in the target or create a new schema. Whatever we create, the table will be created automatically. And of course, we can also choose the pull frequency. So how frequently do we want to call the endpoint and pull the data? So here are some examples where this is already set up. So this is for Asana, for example. This is the API URL. And we are pulling the tasks objects from Asana. We have authentication headers here, and then we added some optional field, which is specific for Asana integration and where the data itself exists. So this is just an example of taking something that otherwise would require you to create a native integration and have Illuma instrument those calls for you in the frequency that you need. And again, as every other integration with Illuma, it will be monitored. If anything goes wrong, there will be an alert, an error message. Another example is the Jira integration. And in that example, we are actually using the JQL Jira language, which basically lets us query on the Jira project. And we are creating a specific project. So in that example, it's project equals SAM. And there is actually a more extensive webinar about the Jira integration specifically that you can hook into as well. So this is for the generic REST connector. Of course, again, like with every other input with Alooma, once it's connected, you can see samples, you can see what happened with them, you can actually see how the data itself is true. The next thing that I want to discuss today that is exciting and new is a native Marketo integration. And this was a very sought out integration. We got requests from a lot of customers to add native Marketo integration. It's a Marketo API is pretty complex, similar to Salesforce. So, for example, this would not be a good candidate for the generic REST reader, just because the API is really, really complex. We have created a native integration for Marketo. It is now very easy, and I'm going to show you in a second how easy it is now to get Marketo data into your target data warehouse. So this is an example of creating a Marketo input. Again, I've already clicked the add input, chose selected Marketo. That lets me define the Marketo input. It's as simple as putting in the endpoint URL, client ID, and client secret. All can be easily received from Marketo. Selecting the objects that you want to stream, and activity types or other things that you might want to stream. Again, since when you want to stream the data until when. With Marketo, as I'm sure many of you know, it's very stingy with API calls. So we let Alooma, you can limit Alooma to the number of API calls that you want to use to make sure you don't run out of API calls, and every other production workload you're running on Marketo is not being hurt by Alooma reading data from there. Same goes for how much data will Alooma read per day, how much megabytes can we extract, because again, there's a hard limit in Marketo. And then similarly to the other options, just define where the data should be generated on the target data warehouse. So this is for the Marketo integration. We already have a few customers running that in production. It's still in beta mode, meaning as with any new native Alooma integration, after we have 5 different customers running it in production for some time, we migrated it to GA. So this is still in that step of moving to GA. So if you want it enabled on your Alooma instance, just go ahead and ask, and we'll add you to the beta program for Marketo. Next exciting thing is that change data capture support for Oracle and Postgres. Both are already in GA actually, so it should be available in your instance, in your Alooma instance already. And of course, when replicating any database, we have 3 options of replication. We can do a full dump and load, which is suitable for small table. We could do incremental replication, but of course, the best option is to do log replication, which is change data capture. Essentially, that means that Alooma is going to read a transaction log of the database. In the Postgres case, it's the write-ahead log. In the Oracle case, it's the redo log. And once reading the transaction log, Alooma will replicate the transaction log in real time into the target data warehouse. It is very similar to the MySQL min-log application that already exists for a very long time. Specifically, the redo log is something that you could only do with Golden Gate up until recently. So this is a new and exciting option to replicate both Postgres and Oracle. With Postgres, it's supported in RDS as well. This is a relatively new feature for Amazon. They provided access to the write-ahead log in RDS, or of course in a self-hosted database, starting from version 9.4, which introduced the logical decoding feature for Postgres. And again, for Oracle, basically starting from Oracle 11G and Oracle 12G are the versions that are supported for that feature. And again, let's see how it looks in live. So we do have a deployment here. This time it's pushing into BigQuery. and it already have an Oracle log miner set up. And again, if we look at the settings, it's extremely simple. We just create the data source, the port, etc., the username, the password, which database want to replicate, and then we choose log replication, which means Alooma, please read the log for me. Once we do that, we have the data replicating, the data going there. And again, you can see the samples themselves coming in from the Oracle database. Those are coming in real time. So this is actually something that came in from 2 minutes ago from the Oracle redo log. And you can see the timestamp as well, matches that time. So this is really exciting for everyone wanting to replicate Oracle Postgres in real time and without creating a significant load on the database itself, like incremental replication, because log replication basically has almost zero footprint on the database itself, on the target database itself. Last but not least, I do want to mention GDPR compliance. GDPR is coming out. May 25th is the date where everyone has to be compliant. Alooma is GDPR ready, and not only Alooma is GDPR ready, Alooma also lets you be GDPR compliant very easily, where you can either detect, scrub out, and hash PII, and also easily know where the PII data is. So understanding, very easy to see and understand where exactly the PII data exists in the data itself. We do have an upcoming webinar on May 22nd. In that webinar, we are going to describe exactly how, with Alooma, you can easily support GDPR and how Alooma can help you be compliant, both in scrubbing out sensitive data, understanding where the sensitive data is, handling the right to forget request, handling when someone asks you to delete their PII data, all of these and more. So this is just a teaser for the webinar that I'm going to give on May 22nd. Last but not least is Snowpipe support. So Snowflake is one of the major targets for Alooma. It's a great cloud data warehouse. And one of the best features for Snowflake is the ability to separate between storage and compute. Meaning when you load data into Snowflake, you pay for storage and compute separately. Now, up until the Snowpipe support, there was essentially a trade-off that every user had to choose between the speed of loading data and the price, the cost. The reason is the Snowflake pricing is minute-based. So for every minute that the data warehouse is awake, you're being billed. And then if you want to just continuously push data into Snowflake, if we want near real-time replication, that essentially means that before Snowpipe, we had to keep the warehouse awake for, let's say, 24/7 and pay the credit cost, etc., pay the compute cost, just for the ETL pipeline. And this is the case for every product we know that flows data into Snowflake. What Snowflake recently released is a Snowpipe. Snowpipe is a feature for Snowflake that can do the loading itself from a different data warehouse that is Snowflake maintained. And the billing for Snowpipe, the big difference here, is the billing for Snowpipe is second-based billing. And as a bonus, you're getting a very much higher throughput through that data warehouse, because this is essentially a data warehouse that loads data for all Snowflake customers. So now Alooma can do near real-time ingestion into Snowflake. It can do it without waking up the data warehouse. And essentially, it gives us increased throughput and significant cost reduction. And actions speak louder than words here. So Alooma itself, we moved our own deployment into Snowpipe. We use Snowflake as well. We are big fans of Snowflake. This is the Alooma billing page for Snowflake for April. As you can see, these are the credits billed for an entire month of usage of loading data. And Alooma's latency into Snowflake is very, very low. I'm actually going to show you the Alooma production system that's loading data into Snowflake. You can see that we have a latency of about 5 minutes continuously. Even if I look 7 days back, the max latency there is 10 minutes. But we are doing that while consuming on average 1.5 credits per day for an entire month instead of 24 credits per day. So this has been a significant cost reduction for Alooma, and it's a significant cost reduction for all of our Snowflake customers as well that wish to use Snowpipe. Again, if you do want Snowpipes enabled, it is very simple. Just ping us and we'll give you the instructions of how to enable it. So these are the new features. Noteworthy announcement, we have a query tab now that you're able to actually load data, see the query that Alooma runs on the target data warehouse and see the schedule for them, control them, run them. So it's a new and improved query tab. New code engine editor, which lets you use the module feature much more efficiently. So you can actually see different modules, create different modules, split the code engine much more efficiently and use it more efficiently. So it's a whole new code engine editor. Cron expression for scheduling queries on the target data warehouse, and a lot of improvement in many different integrations. A quick sneak peek to what's coming next in Alooma. So these are the things that are coming next. We are adding two new destinations for data. One is Azure SQL Server, where the data will go into Azure Blob Storage and as a staging area, and from there into Azure SQL. And then adding an S3 as an output, like as a full-fledged output, a full-fledged target that will also support Athena, as we do see a lot of Presto usage. We are adding new data sources with emphasis on enterprise RDBMS, namely Teradata and Netezza. And if any of you has Netezza, end of life is next year, so should probably migrate to something else. And for security, single sign-on as a very important feature. And again, this is a long requested feature for many of our customers, so this is coming very soon. And there is a lot more that our engineering team is working on. So with that, I'll move the mic back to Justin that will describe our new pricing model.
All right. Thank you, Yair. Make sure my screen pops up. All right. Well, wonderful. Thanks, everybody. And always exciting, and there's just it seems like every day there's something new here as the product continues to mature, and so we'd be very excited to talk to you guys on any thoughts or questions that you have on any of that. Now, one thing that had happened as the product was maturing and folks were getting more and more value out of it, we realized that the way that we were approaching pricing wasn't really aligning with what our customers were hoping for or wanted to do. One of the biggest challenges was, as you saw Yair talking about all the different ways we can help you accurately and securely get data into a data warehouse, for example, is that our customers are having to extrapolate how many or how much data they would be pushing into their data warehouse in, say, a given 12 months or some period of time, and was hard, and also would be difficult if you had plans for additional data sources in the future or plans for growth and scaling and those types of things. And also was also somewhat difficult to go in and just kind of jumpstart and get started using Illuma, testing and getting initial value and those types of things. And so our goal was to see if we could come up with a flexible, easy plan that would allow folks to jump in, get going with Illuma, get that initial value, and identify and verify it's going to work for you and the goals that you have in your data environment. But then also have it optimized for scale and have it optimized for those that then really want to move it into full production with perhaps low, but also perhaps very high amounts of data being pushed through. And so what we've done is we have introduced what we're calling credits, and basically credits are just a way for us to track. Each credit would be worth 1 million events loaded into your data warehouse, and we now have two ways that you can purchase events from Alooma. So we do now offer a on-demand or pay-as-you-go type of a model. There is a nominal kind of minimum monthly cost associated with that, but the goal is really to make it lower the barrier of entry as much as possible so that you, the customer, can jump in and begin using all of these great features that Yair is talking about, plus all of the other things that folks are hoping to get out of Alooma. So that is very exciting, and we feel, and we've already seen a dramatic increase in the number of people who are adopting and using and getting value and experimenting and really playing around with the power that Alooma has, but also that analytics in the cloud can give you overall. So that flexibility is great, but then also, as you look to maybe fully implement or scale out and are working with maybe higher amounts of volume, what we have is the ability to prepay or pre-purchase for credits, and it could be as many as really as you want, but it doesn't have to be for a year. It can be for other amounts of time. But the thought is to give you an amount or an ability to say, hey, we know we're going to be using this much. We want to go ahead and purchase these ahead of time, and offering nice discounts on that on-demand or pay-as-you-go price that allows customers to have that flexibility. So here we felt like the model would give you both the ability to jump in, get value, get going, get using, and then also as you look to scale, have higher amounts of volume, or just have a better expectation of how much data you're going to be pushing, then we offer some great discount ability and flexibility for the customer as well. So this has been also, really aligns with what our customers are looking for, whether it be a small early stage startup that is just trying to figure these things out, whether it's a scaling company that's going through changes and realizes the way they were doing things and analytics is no longer working for them internally, or for the larger enterprises that maybe have a greater expectation and understanding of what they're trying to do and want to have some control around where costs are and things like that. So great flexibility. It's been, we feel, a great alignment with what the customer is expecting. Secondly, here is that we want to make sure that for you guys that have come here and attended the webinar today, we want to offer a $500 worth of free credits in your first month. So to make it even easier to get up and going and lower that barrier of entry even more, we have provided to those here in attendance $500 worth of free credits in Alooma, which is we can get you the details of that, but it's going to be in the tens of millions of events range, meaning that we can get a lot of data loaded in for you at no cost to you, and really an opportunity to see the value and put it to use. So with that, what I will do is let you know, lastly, that we would love to work with you. We'd love to hear from you. You can contact us here at info@alooma.com. Obviously, you can also go to our website, request information there. With this, though, in that email, if you can put in the hashtag 500free, we'll know that you attended the webinar today and make sure that we can get that to you. With that, I will thank everybody for joining, and then we'll open up here for a Q&A, and we may have some questions that were loaded already, and Tasha can feel free to ask those.
Great. Thanks so much, Justin and Yair. Great session. If you haven't done so already, please send us your questions. And we do have a few that were coming in throughout the webinar. So I will go ahead. There were a couple that came through on the product section. So Yair, could you explain a little bit more about PII data? And can it stream into another separate target once it goes in through Alooma?
Yeah, so generally for PII data, what we've seen people doing is creating all kinds of regular expressions mostly to find out if something is PII. So if it's an email, if it's an IP address, if it's a credit card number, if it's a social security number. And then once we find out that there is, and of course you can also predefine where the PII data lies, but you don't have to. You can also use logic for that. Once PII data is identified, there are a few options. One option is to completely scrub it out. One option is to encrypt it. One option is to hash it, so anonymize it. And then, of course, hashing is irreversible, where encryption is reversible, but with encryption, you still risk losing the encryption key. So this is basically the choice. And yes, the PII data can also steer into a different target. And that target generally in Alooma, it's what you've seen was like the pawning screen, which was the main screen where you've seen all the integration going into target. You can have several of those in your account, and you can have them going into different targets. So you can have one that's only responsible for the PII data going to one target, and the other going into a different target. And also you can push to different schemas or different databases or data sets if it's BigQuery on the same target as well.
Great. Another question for you, Yair. How fast can Illuma replicate from PostgreSQL into Snowflake, and can the data be available within seconds?
So generally, yes. The question is, of course, always a question of throughput versus latency. Alooma reads the data from Snowflake very quickly. Usually it's within, I would say, a minute. It is important to note that it lands in Snowflake in a staging table, as Postgres is a transactional database. It can have operations like create, update, delete, where Snowflake, while it does have DML as well, you should always treat it as an update-only, append-only database. So what Alooma does, and this is actually explained in more detail in the consolidation section in our documentation, Alooma loads all of the data into a staging table. Usually, I would say reaching the staging table, the fastest we go is 1 to 2 minutes, just not to overload Snowflake too much. You don't want to give it really tiny files to copy. So usually the minimum file size that we provide Snowflake is 1 minute worth of data. And then Alooma merges that into a table look exactly like Postgres, every frequency to your choice. However, we do provide a view, and that view is a near real-time view. So the second something lands in the staging table, it can already be queried from the view. So essentially what I would say a realistic expectation to Snowflake is between 1 and 2 minutes from Postgres database.
Great. Okay, I've got a few, looks like some pricing questions for you, Justin. Can you better describe the difference between a credit and an event?
Yes, good question. So a credit represents 1 million events. And so we will, as you talk to, for example, if you get things up and going, you're talking to one of our representatives, they may talk to you in credits, but that would represent a million events. And an event would be basically is a row loaded into your data warehouse. So 1 million of those would then equal 1 credit with Alooma. So 50 credits or 100 credits would be 100 million events loaded into the data warehouse. And the offer then also on here, the $500 is dollars worth of free credits, if that makes sense.
Great. Another one is, how can someone anticipate how many credits they will need?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do, and well, part of the nice part about getting started with this is we have a few different ways we can help you estimate what you're going to need. We can, as you get up and going with Alooma, especially using your free $500 worth, we can help you gauge where that's going to be. There are different ways depending on the data source that you're looking at. We can help you estimate what may or may not be needed, and then kind of going forward from there, help you make the best judgment as far as how many credits you may need to purchase. And again, you don't necessarily have to purchase for the entire, any entire block of time. It's kind of figuring out what's going to be needed and then going from there.
Great. And do you charge for the initial download?
Yeah, so you can talk to us about that. We have in the on-demand or pay-as-you-go, the initial dump. I'm guessing is a historical dump is what's being asked here, and the answer is typically yes. However, in our prepay options, and we do have some enterprise packages available where there's massive amounts of data, and we are happy to be more flexible in that as we dive into the details. But if you were just to sign up for on-demand and get going, the answer would be yes. However, we do have some flexibility there. And so please don't hesitate to talk to us if you have more questions around that.
And it says there's another question here. Do you charge for inserting to the stage table, then again to the final table?
No, and Yair can talk about the details here, but we would just count the final load into the data warehouse as an event loaded. And Yair, if you want to add any other technical aspects of that, please feel free.
Just any row in the transaction log that we load, considered as one event, and we don't charge for the merge of that row into the final table.
Perfect, thanks.
Great. These were some really great questions. Let me see. It looks like we got time for one more. How do you make sure that the initial download for the historical dump doesn't use up all the 500? How would you work with a customer in that scenario?
Sure, that's a great point. And what we can do is that's a simple phone call. We have our data solutions team here that can work with you. And so sometimes what folks will do is we can select, for example, a few tables that we know aren't going to supersede that, but will give you a good feeling or taste for what the data will look like loaded into your data warehouse or pushing it through Alooma. So we can help you identify those, and we can make sure too that once we're on the same page, we everybody we kind of have a plan moving forward to make sure that we don't burn everything up on the free 500 if that's what you're concerned about. So again, just let us know. It can be a quick conversation, and we can make sure that we take care of you and you're able to test everything that you want to.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And on behalf of Justin, Yair, and the rest of the Illuma team, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. Look out for the recording for today's presentation in your email, and stay tuned for future Illuma webinars. Have a great day. Bye.